Hi all, Sifu here. This is just the few seconds prelude to the way of conscious mindful. Oh, there she is. So here we go. Okay, right. So for your partner, this is the backlog. I'll actually put on the thing where we start. We're going to start in a couple of seconds, and so here we so this will end up as the audio. So everybody else, welcome to the show. We're also recording this live to be a podcast in the near future. So I started in a certain way, so just bear with us. And here we go. Are you ready?
Totally.
Cool. Okay. So, open your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness. With me, Sifu Boggie. Sifu means guide. It means someone who points you along the way, who guides you on your path. Boggie means the balance of between the chaos and the calmness. And he's my martial arts, my spiritual, and my healing learning. And for the last 39 years, I have been studying the Taoist arts. The Tao means the way, the path, the balance. And I have studied many different things like Tai Chi, Qigong, Tuina, Chinese massage, reflexology, five-element cooking, the Tao Te Ching, the I Ching, and many, many other techniques, with the goal to help people find their very own personal way, path, or Tao. And over the years, I've helped people with chronic pain, fibromyalgia, ME, MS, migraines, and many other ailments and injuries, as well as helping life coaches, healers, and light workers supercharge themselves and ensure they never burn out. So that's who I am and what I do. What's this show all about? Well, this show is The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, a regular podcast show discussing spirituality and science, balancing health and well-being with mind, body, and spirit, with a Taoist twist. What does the Tao mean? The Tao means the way, the path, the balance. Now, this show, anything with me in it isn't normal. And this isn't a normal show. Each week we either have a subject or a guest. Tonight we have another awesome guest. And our goal, our aim, is to have an open discussion, help us all find new techniques, new ways, new skills to balance our very own personal way, path, or Tao. So that's that bit out of the way. So good evening, Shannon. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. It's been a beautiful day. I'm across the ocean from you, but it's beautiful over here in the Appalachians, and I hope you're having a great day where you are too.
Oh yes, it's been an awesome day here, very much so. So I'm going to start with the question. Now you're 289. This is my 289th show, and I'm going to ask there's a themed question or something themed question. And I always say this as a sort of tease, but I've actually had two people. I've only had two people run away from the show after me asking this question. But don't panic. But so this is the show. This is your show, The Way of Shannon Shine. So Shannon, what is your way? What is your personal Tao?
Ooh, such a deep question, and I had to think of what was the best way to describe my Tao. And I think that, you'll probably learn through this discussion that I have many, many different like little aspects of my personality. But I think the way of my Tao is to just in general be who I needed when I was younger. That's like my favorite go-to motto when I don't know what to do with life, when I feel overwhelmed, when one project doesn't go right or something, just take a deep breath and I just try to remember like who would I have needed when I was younger and who do I need in the now from my future. So like I try to tap into my future self and bring that into the now too and be like, all right, I'm having a panic attack. What would my future self tell me? Or if someone comes to me as like I do a lot of energy work and soul channeling, I don't like to say I'm necessarily a healer because I'm just holding space for the process. But when someone comes to me, I always try to be like, all right, breathe. Before I react, who would I have needed when I was younger, and who does spirit wish for me to be? And I guess that is my Tao, my way of moving forward. And by doing so, it's also a matter of tapping into power and trying to accept all of who I am, because when I was younger, I was often told I was too much or too this, that, or the other. And being who I needed when I was younger is allowing myself to be all that I am so that I give the younger versions of me permission to do the same. Because that's what I really needed, was someone to just say, if others think you're too much, then tell them to go find less and just be yourself. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
No, 100%, 100%. I think that's one of the biggest awakenings. When, like, people, addictions. When people are in addictions, it's because they're, in essence, saying Taoist philosophy on addictions is that there's a void. You're trying to fill the void. You're trying to fill it with drugs, with relationships, with whatever it is. You're definitely trying to fill. And that void is you. The void you're trying to fill is your connection to the universe, but the universe is you. And it's one of those interesting things. As kids, we do lots of stuff I always say the thing that bemuses me the most in life is that when we're kids, we talk to imaginary friends when we're told, oh, that's naughty and all, or people think you're crazy. And then we go and see a psychic who's talking to imaginary friends that are not imaginary.
That's me.
But, this is my point, is that there's all these things that you are as a kid. And again, it's part of the process to have things knocked off and then build. It's really annoying, but when you're building something made out of Lego or playing Jenga, and something knocks it down, but part of the knocking down is the building back up. You learn stuff and that is this weird process of life. Is that we are actually already complete when we're kids, and then we get knocked down, and your goal is actually to build yourself back up, because kids are great students, great teachers. And a lot of who you are was always, there's this interesting thing. A lot of people talk about the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but they talk about like, oh, Shannon's the divine feminine, Boggie. No, the divine feminine is a quality, it's an energy. Whether you're one Boggie sayings, whether you're man, woman, banana, or goat, you have divine feminine qualities. You have divine masculine qualities, but, and the one I live by the most, you have sacred child, you have divine child qualities. The sacred child, when you were a kid, you saw the awe, the wonder in everything. You saw a butterfly or you saw a worm going across, and oh wow, and you see the beauty and the wonder in everything. You could have a box, a cardboard freaking box, and you could turn it into a spaceship, a castle, your luxury home. You could make magic out of everything. You would talk to people, imaginary friends, which actually, there are actually scientists that actually know a couple of things. They know that there is dimensions out there that are slightly out of phase that certain people can actually see. Your pineal gland actually allows we're actually meant to see infrared and ultraviolet. When they've done MRI scans and they've flashed lights, infrared and ultraviolet lights, the brain's picking them up. The eye is picking it up, but the brain's not registering that information. So if it's saying ultraviolet and infrared, our eyes see ultraviolet and infrared. What else are they seeing? What other stuff are we seeing that we're not registering? That we did when we were kids, because when we were kids, you say, oh, I can see this and see that, and parents go, oh, you're making it up, you're imagining, let's close it all down.
The fact that you bring that up is such a powerful thing for me, because that's actually why I am who I needed when I was younger. It all started when I was like 4 years old, so you kind of like took me back to my roots here. I saw an angel. I connected with angels. That's why I do all of my angel work. It's why I got wings around me. And people might think it's cheesy, but to me, it's very real. And I saw this energy, and it's warned me. And I had imaginary friends And I realize now as I grew up, those friends were actually different angels and spirit guides that I was connecting with, and possibly even spirits that had yet to be born yet, that are now my friends that are in younger years. So I was connecting with these spirits through time and space. And my grandmother and the adults around me, some of them were very turned off by it. Some of them were like, "Oh no, sweetheart, you'll grow out of that. It's okay." They're just like, "You're bored. You need something to." I'm like, "No." They're like helping me. They've led me here. They introduced me to this friend, or they warned me of this thing. And sometimes they would warn me of things that were scary to other adults. I was the child who would kind of foresee somebody's passing, so that alarmed the adults around me. But it also brought me a sense of comfort as a child, because it helped me understand the spirit realm in a different way, because then I could continue the conversation with these beings. So for those that don't know me, I lost both my parents when I was really young, and I started seeing angels before I lost my parents. And being able to see these beings and these energies and these spiritual connections that people were calling my imaginary friends, it gave me a warning. So I would ask my parents questions, like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite animal? If something were to happen to you, how would you speak to me? And those aren't questions that normal children would typically ask. But because I started asking them, I now have those divine memories that I can speak to the spirit in my family through those conscious questions that I asked and those imprints that they left. And if more people were willing to allow the children to lead the way in that path, imagine what connection to the spirit realms we would have if we weren't saying, "Oh no, sweetheart, the spirits can't speak to us." It's like, no, these children are talking to the energies because they are not yet conditioned to think that they can't help them. And I have this belief that we condition children to think that it's not possible, because imagine the amount of telepathy we would have as adults. Imagine the amount of community and the a less control that the other powers to be would have if we could connect with spirit, and spirit could honestly guide all of us. That's a crazy thought that I have quite often.
Well, it's not that crazy. As this show, I say that it shows the balance between spirituality and science. I love quantum physics. I love science, but I love science because actually true science actually clarifies spirit. Actually, a lot of the ancient knowledge, like I'm what's called a dragon dog shaman, qualified in Taoism as a dragon dog shaman, and they were basically like ancient quantum physicists. They believed in dimensions, they believed in other realities. And I've had conversations with scientists. I've had conversations with alphabet agencies, let's say, and I've said this quite a few times in the show. There's the person I knew who's deadly serious, never joked about anything, very serious member of an alphabet agency in America. And I once said, "So when are you guys going to admit that unicorns, fairies, and Bigfoot, especially, exist, and they walk around? We're fully aware that there are other dimensions that these beings come from, and they phase in and out, and there's a whole science. There is a science. In actual fact, last year, near the end of last year, NASA made this very strange statement where they said they've now detected 14 different dimensions that contain life, and that's it. That's all they told you. And then most people, what, who, what, where, and they're totally.
People are like, "Oh, that's satire. That's not real." And it's like, but it is. It's like when they released the documents from the CIA that there's, they actually have spaceships and saucers and things, and like most of us know that. But then they just like released the documents in the middle of COVID last year, and people didn't even get to like take in that, okay, we have other dimensions. They have flying saucers, so there's beings out there that are able to travel further than us, and like. Oh, it's so crazy how things like that just sneak into the collective and so many people miss it. And then there's us out here that are like, we've been waiting our whole lives for this.
and there's a lot of stuff like that. Now, there was actually, we're talking about with the kids, and there are actually, so science is all about documentation. You document stuff and there's this big difference between peer-reviewed and common known science or mainstream science and deep-seated science or actual science that's going on. And what people don't realise is a lot of science that was established in fact, but mainstream science does not want to bring it into the foreground. And there's certain reasons for that. It actually goes to certain things. There's a thing called the Brookings report. And the Brookings report is actually based about UFOs and based about alien life. Now, back before they went into space, NASA went into space, they created the Brookings report. And the Brookings report said, if we were to find alien artifacts or aliens in outer space or on any other planet, what effect would it have in society? And they basically said, while we still have wars, while we still have religion, while we still have conversations, any outer fact would basically, it could crumble the earth, would fall apart, basically. But that Brookings report was also in any science that affected the mainstream, that would actually radically change the viewpoints of society, which also was considered under the Brookings report and another report before that too radical. So any information that they thought was too radical was to be suppressed. One of those bits of information they actually had in India, Africa and China especially, there were over 1,500 case studies of children between the ages of 2 and 6 especially, that they grew up saying, I used to be a man, or I used to be a woman in a village where, and they would be, in Africa, India and China especially, say 60, 100 miles away, and they actually had scientists that would find these kids. They would take all the information that the kid said. They would then travel to that village, and they would say, did such and such a person exist? Yes. What did they look like? Or who was their relatives? Who was this? And there is in all three of these countries, there are over 15 to 2,000 documented cases of, so 15 to 2,000. So in total, you're talking about over 6,000 documented cases of children who have past life. They know names, they know locations, they knew what their house looked like, they knew what the people looked like, and they've gone and checked that information. So it takes 3,000 to make something, said that, there's enough evidence to actually prove that 3,000 cases. They've got 6,000 cases. So there's already.
Well, I'm because I have a journal full of things I used to tell my grandmother from different lifetimes, and I wish I knew where that journal was. It's probably at my grandmother's old house with my aunt and my old belongings, but I used to write, or she would write about them too. I would go to her every weekend and she'd be like, so what did you dream about this week? She was one of the people who kind of like allowed me a little bit of the spiritual freedom because she was so curious about what I could do. And she would ask me, what were your dreams about this week? And I would tell her, I was like, I think I was somewhere maybe like not really Egyptian, but very desert-like because, I was a child, so I didn't know the places. But sometimes I would whip out names of things and she would be like, how do you know that? Like, what world do you come from that you would know, like when you're 2 or 3 and you're saying things about Giza and like different places like that, and you're just like, I don't know, like it just came from me. And then I would also tell her things about seeing a bright light, and that it wasn't necessarily like a light that was like the God, like the light was sort of God, but it was also more of a tunnel just to the next life. And I would tell her all these stories about how I would walk through this tunnel and there'd be these different doors, or I would say, I think I explained them as galaxies, and I can still kind of see it. And sometimes I'll see it in meditation where I'm just like walking down this portal, and it's something that's happened since I was a small child. And there was probably about a decade between, probably around like 11 to 21 where I was terrified of it because everyone thought it was weird. Everyone thought I was the weird girl who would remember her dreams in full detail, and I would want to talk about things like unicorns and fairies and all this stuff, and people would just be like, oh, Shannon, when are you going to grow up? And I'm like, if growing up means that I can't believe in the things that bring me joy, then I don't want to grow up because this is my reality. And it's brought me such a sense of grounding in ways that, typical reality may not. Sometimes I call it muggle reality, for lack of a better word, because I was a Harry Potter kid, and I was just like, sometimes when people tell me to not believe in the spiritual things that have brought me such grounding, and that the idea that maybe I have I firmly believe I've lived many different lives, and people always are like, where do you get such knowledge? You're only blah, blah, blah years old, and they've told me that my whole life. And I'm like, it's not just me, yo. It's not this body. It's something that's beyond me, and I just allow it to channel through. And it's lifetimes of different experiences. And I don't want to take credit for it as Shannon. It's something way beyond Shannon in the now. So I love that you have all this knowledge of the other children. And I know there's other children out there. I wish more adults had memories that they weren't afraid to claim as actual experiences, because so many people are like, oh, I imagined this, or I daydreamed that. And it's like, well, who are you not to step into the power of that energy and learn from whatever that situation, experience, channeling, download, whatever you want to call it is, because you're re-experiencing it. You're having that sort of spiritual deja vu, that past life deja vu for a reason. So why not just kind of, allow yourself to explore what that could mean, rather than just be like, oh, I just imagined it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes on. One of the things, interesting things, is that there's actually a philosophy. Well, I've often had, again, alphabet agencies, because I work as a close protection officer, so I work with different agencies, and I work in different countries with different people. And there's a lot of things the alphabet agencies, especially in America, would say, not for films, but especially Star Trek, Stargate, Lord of the Rings. These are soft disclosure. And I said, what do you mean soft disclosure? And they say they're actually purposely made to release certain information into the world. And there's an old philosophy that all stories aren't stories. They're other dimensions. And they would think that within the Dragon Dog Shaman, other dimensions is everything. The past, the present, the future, alternative realities, they're all dimensions. They're all different layers. I'm an ex-baker. There's all different layers to a cake. And so there's all these different layers, and they're all together. They're like the pages in the book. It's just we can't quite see them. But the Dragon Dog Shaman will talk about adjusting the eye, so you could, when you see something flash past and you say, oh, I made that up. You didn't make that up at all. It exists. Everything's happening all at once. There are so many things. There are dinosaurs walking past you from another reality or another time, another dimension. And everything happens all at once. And we can actually pick into that information. When we talk, in the West, we talk about the Akashic records and tuning into the Akashic records, the records of knowledge. But the Tao, tuning into the Tao, is that all that knowledge, not just of this planet, but every single planet, every single galaxy. Because there are billions they now know there are billions of galaxies out there. We're actually to the point where they believe that there is no end of the universe, because they say wherever you observe, wherever you focus on, the universe puts something there to find, or consciousness puts something there to find. So you'll never find the end of the universe, because the further you'll look, the more stuff you'll find. But everything, there's all these things that exist, and our imagination is actually the doorway, the portal into these other realities. And there's a lot of meditations. There's a whole set of Taoist meditations, one called the Island. And you imagine this island, and on this island there's different parts to this island. But this island actually represents your body, you. So there's a part that's your head, there's a part that is all your organs, there's parts that's your meridians, your chakras, your organs. And you go to that, and you can, if you've got a stomach problem, the part that's your stomach, you can work on the ground and nurture the ground and make the stomach better, and that will reflect, that's a shadow of your body. But also, the island, on my island, there's an ice rink. And when I was when I was a teenager, I loved ice skating, and I could learn a new trick, and then I would go home and meditate on the island and go and spend time in the ice rink doing that trick. Come back a day later, and people go, you've lost that trick. It's like you've been doing it for months. But you only learned it yesterday. And it's like, I went to the island. What? But there's this thing of, in your mind, we know that we can daydream hours can, that minutes can go by and we feel it's hours, or hours can go by. And, we've had a whole lifetime of stuff that happens. Because time is a little bit of an illusion. Quantum physics knows time is a bit of an illusion. We can actually slow and speed up time. They know that as well. So, but the whole idea is that these other realities, you can actually do stuff. You can learn stuff. You can process stuff somewhere else and bring it back to this reality. And you've actually grown in it and you've experienced it, and that's what we do as kids. We play in virtual reality as kids, and we bring that information back. But our society has closed that down because it's very, society doesn't want us to be telepathic or empathic, because then how can you hide stuff? If everybody can read everybody else, how would you hide things? How would you keep secrets? How could you withhold information? Because if the universe is all interconnected and all one, there are no barriers, there are no restrictions. But that means then things have to change. That means that there's no need of secrets. There's no need of us and them. There's no need of all the restrictions that we have in this reality. And right now, a lot of that would fall away if you could expand your consciousness, if you could see what's on the other side of the earth, if you could, you could view what's happening right now on the other side of the earth, which is actually called remote viewing, which is existed. Again, you talked about a certain alphabet agency that actually released documents about visiting Mars, and seeing the ancient civilization that was on Mars, and that's CIA. That's a CIA document. There's actually a document on there. And also, in actual fact, what most people don't realise, that I think it was 1996, the CIA actually did an official document saying that remote viewing, so that remote viewing is simply inside yourself. You actually can put yourself at any time, any place, anywhere, and observe something. And they said it existed, and there was actual documents in 1996 that made it legitimate, so legitimate businesses could actually use remote viewing. And FT 500 and 100 index businesses are using remote viewers to find oil, diamonds, water, whatever they need. They've been using it for at least since the 90s. There's actually some evidence that it actually happened way before then, or at least governments were using it beforehand. So remote viewing is real. Psychic energy is real. Psychics have been used in FT 500 index businesses, or the Fortune 500 index businesses, again, for over 50 years. There's lots of
stuff. What do you think about teleportation, Boggie? That's what I'm curious about. I asked someone yesterday, I said, do you think teleportation is real? Because how else are all these big, people that are higher up getting from place to place so quick, especially with the world being so closed and this, that, and the other? And I was like, I feel like somebody somewhere has to be able to teleport.
So everything is a technology. Let's say, so like remote view, and with technology, with all technologies, there's an external, or let's say AI, machine version, and then there's an internal or psychic version. So like for example, like reading somebody's, sending information, hundreds of miles. Well, we have phones, we can send a message, but people have been doing that through telepathy for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, that's what we do with artists too. When I create art, I channel. It's like somebody, sometimes when they want something commissioned, I'll say, close your eyes and send it to me. And sometimes I'll close my eyes with them if I'm on the phone or something, and I'll describe to them what I'm seeing, and they're like, that's exactly what I wanted. Can you turn it into a painting? And that's how I create a lot of custom painting, is kind of like a remote viewing meditation with that person in the moment, and they telepathically send it to me.
So all these abilities are technologies, and you have external and internal. So the question was, does teleportation exist? Both versions, external and internal. The Dragon Dog Shaman talked about, so there's a couple of, so there's a thing called, I don't know, the audience, there's a thing called the Merkaba, which is a triangle. So the Star of David, if you ever seen the Star of David, which is a triangle pointing down and a triangle pointing up, well, that is actually the 3D representation of that is a pyramid, one pyramid pointing up and one pyramid pointing down. It's called the Merkaba or the Merkaba. Now, the Merkaba is actually in the Bible, and it was actually David, one of the saints, David, was actually saw a Merkaba, which can also sometimes be translated into chariot. A Merkaba came from the heavens, came down, and he went in that chariot and he transcended to heaven. There's a lot of information about also Ezekiel, who talks about the Merkaba, and Ezekiel going off in the Merkaba. And the Merkaba is actually a spirit. It's like an energy body. It's part of you. It's part of your energy that creates this energy body that actually transcends. Now, the interesting thing on that, for those who love UFOs, quite recently, in the last 10 years, people have seen more and more Merkaba style, like videos, there's actual videos of these spinning discs, it seems to be like, two triangles spinning. And, it's actually, and there's a lot of remote viewing on, it's actually these Merkabas, these actual people moving as a craft from one place to another. Now, the Merkaba, so you can travel, but the thing with the Merkaba, that all time and space is actually layered on top of each other. So you can actually, using the Merkaba, literally transfer from point A from point B instantly. So in that Merkaba, you literally just swap from one place to the other. And within Dragon Dog Chamber, we also talk about not necessarily the Merkaba, but literally you think of almost like two screens on TV. You have two screens of like one on countryside and one on a mountain, and merge the two pictures together, and then you phase one out. And the meditation, so the teleportation meditation is you imagine yourself in that other place, and you just keep making it and keep thinking of it, making it more and more real. And there are reports,
I've transcended time that way. I actually have an example of that. I learned about the Merkaba through Archangel Metatron. He's the angel that works with Merkabas.
Yep.
And I did a Merkaba activation a few years ago. It's through the breath work, similar to like the ego eradicator. And anyway, you do the breathing, you do the thing. And after you do it so much through the breath work, you can kind of start to do it in your mind a little bit. And it's funny that you said that and you used the Merkaba, because I went for a walk with my partner, Suleiman, the other day, and we went quite a ways. And the further we got, the hotter it got. And I was like, so exhausted. We went to the top of this mountain, like next to my house. And when we started walking back, I was like, I might pass out. I'm going to teleport myself home. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes and walk. And I would like you to just walk silently with me. And if I go off path, let me know. And he was like, okay. So I just closed my eyes and I was like, he's like, what are you seeing? How are you like navigating where you're going? And I was like, shh. I see a Merkaba. And I was like seeing this like blue and red kind of like pulsing Merkaba in my like third eye, because I was like hot, I was sweaty, I was really miserable, and I was thirsty, and I just wanted to get home. And I was like, I'm just going to visualize my Merkaba. And I swear what would have been like a 45-minute walk was only like maybe 5 to 10 minutes. It felt like we were there instantly. I opened my eyes once just to see where I was and was like, oh, we're already here. Like we had gotten to the shady part, which was like the end of it. I was just like, wow, that Merkaba thing really worked. I just like breathed through it, and it like really felt like I transcended space for a moment.
Well, actually, I mean, he was watching earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but Robbie McKenzie used to be a former co-host here on The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, and he'd done a book on the Merkaba, Metatron's Cube of the Merkaba, and in actual fact, in the East, so in the West we talk about Archangel Metatron. In the East, Archangel Metatron is called General Guan. So General Quan or General Quan. And he's the divine masculine. So the Archangel Metatron is the divine masculine energy. In the East, it's known as General Quan. And the whole idea is that it is the Merkaba is a vehicle of sorts, but it's actually, it's living, it's consciousness, it's you in your higher form. So the Merkaba is literally a vehicle of part of your energy. In the ancient knowledge, in the last couple of thousand years, things got split up. But originally, when you look at the ancient knowledge, when I went to Japan, um, China, India, Tibet, they taught that, and even in Judaism, in the Jewish culture, they actually talk about the ancient system or the ancient spirit bodies, and they say that our consciousness has these layers, these like just like we've got blood vessels and muscles and bones. They talk about
layers too, right?
yeah, well, yes, but deeper than that. So the meridian system, in China they talk about the meridians, these energy channels. Well, that's the first layer. Then they talk about the chakras, which are the emotional sense. So the meridians are nearer to the physical body, but they do affect the emotions and the spirit. The chakras are nearer to the emotional body, but they do affect the physical body and the spirit. Then you have the aura, and the auras are then they're more into the thoughts and the etheric. Then you have those three layers. Then you have the macabre, which is the divine masculine energy. Then the Torah field, or the flower of life. The Torah field is a donut energy. Now they've actually found, science has found in the heart, there's actually this Torah field, this bioelectric energy. It's like a donut. And when you're happy, it expands. And when you're scared or angry or frustrated, it contracts. And within the ancient systems, so they talk about the meridians, the chakras, the aura, the Merkaba, the Torah field, and the final one in Chinese called the Dantians. But in Christianity, they talk about the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity is this Dantians, which is this like and they're more like batteries or cells. You've got one in your belly, one in your heart, and one in the top of your head, the third eye. And so they talk about these ancient systems being like almost like spiritual anatomy, and all these different layers all interacting, almost like different dimensions. Then you can get really deep in each one. So like the chakras, people can get really deep into the chakras and all the information.
The chakras are my jam. I actually just released my book last week, or like this week. I just released my book this week on chakras. So I love diving into those.
Well, we can talk about that in a second. And then so the whole point is that all these aspects, they're all different, and aspects. And it's a little bit like saying, you talk about a country, but you can talk about the women in that country, the men in that country, what they do, and the children in that country. There's all these different, it's more than one thing. And even in the country, you have, the northern part of that country, people are a little bit different. The southern part, the western part, the eastern part. And that's, and so the ancient, they call it the ancient five spirits. So the ancient five spirits are the meridians, the chakras, the aura, the Merkaba, the Torah field. And then what binds them together, like if they were layers of a cake, explainer, they're layers of a cake, you would have, like the jam, the cream, and the frosting. So the three dantians, they bind them together. They're the three energies that bind them together. And you find within all religions, they talk about the Trinity and they talk about certain things. And you find there's a lot more information, like the chakras actually mentioned to a degree within Christianity, it's mentioned in the Muslim faith, it's mentioned within the Jewish faith, but in different ways. These things are talked about in different ways. So it's just interesting that, all this information is there. It's just that, certain people will focus on certain things or certain aspects. It's all interesting. So as you said, you've done a book on the chakras, but tell me a little bit, how did you get to this? What sparked this off?
Well, the chakras, it comes from the whole wanting to be who I needed when I was younger, and I was a very emotional being, and I didn't understand where the emotions were coming from or how to work with them, how to acknowledge them. People wanted me to kind of suppress them, and I did for a long time because again, going back to what I said earlier, I felt like I was too much for everyone around me because everybody would be like, take it down a notch. And I was like, I don't know how. I feel things so deeply, and I felt everybody else has everything so deeply that working with the chakras and auras, I kind of do both. But right now I've been really focusing on the chakras because, as you explained so beautifully, there's layers to it. And the chakras, I think, where a lot of people need to start before they start expanding into some of these other things, because you need to, well, I believe we need to understand our own emotions first, because to understand ourselves, then we can expand into a more universal understanding of how all the layers of the cake fit together. And the chakras for me were powerful because I was seeing auras and I was seeing colors around beings, and I would see how beings' energies would expand and retract, as you said, but I didn't understand why. And I learned that it's through their emotions and their chakras that they can control that outer energy field. So diving into the chakras, I realized that I was using different tools kind of intuitively. I was using different, I got really into crystals and different essential oils, and I work with the angels. And I also realized that I'm super sensitive to certain foods, to the point that people thought I was just a really picky eater as a child. But certain foods, especially the processed ones and things, they would really tear my body up, my physical body, because I'm channeling information in a non-egoy way. I'm channeling information much higher level than some of these low vibrational foods I was being fed as a child. And it was making me very physically sick. And I went through several different phases in my life where I was very physically ill, and I felt both physically unable to conquer the world, but mentally and emotionally unstable. So when I dove into the chakras, I learned that if I could manage my emotions in a different way, that I could then alter my physical body. I could lose weight. I could change my hair can grow faster, like things, like little things people don't think about it. They were, how do I do this? Why won't my hair grow? And it's like, well, first of all, you're saying that, your hair never grows, and it's the way you're speaking, because that comes out of your throat chakra and your self-expression. And it's also the way that you believe. So the releasing of the attachment of everything you think you know. You think your hair can't grow, or you think you can't speak a certain way, or you think you can't control your emotions because you've been programmed a certain way. So when you allow that to kind of release out of your crown chakra, the rest of your lower chakras start to kind of find an alignment. And over the years, people started to watch me go through this huge transformation, and they would start asking me questions like, well, how do you focus on releasing fear? Or how do you gain confidence when you're feeling in the dark space? And I was like, I have these series of tools that have worked for me. And I started to research the chakras and found that many other people were using similar tools. So I organized it all into a book for people that I've just released. But in general, just the idea of it was so fascinating to me that I started to be able to read it in other people through their aura. And I really got into energy work and Reiki. And I kind of do my own form of energy now. I don't necessarily know if I feel comfortable even calling it Reiki, because I'm not using the more ancient historical version of Reiki. It's something that just came more intuitively to me. And I think that's what's happening to so many other people as we tune in and wake up. We each have our own unique way of working with energy and healing ourselves and facilitating healing in others just by following our intuition. So the chakras are just kind of like a cheat sheet, or like an opening to finding your own emotional stability and being able to stand in that power to help others. So the chakras were just really important.
Mm-hmm. Well, very quickly, so the Reiki, the Reiki most people do in the West actually different to the Reiki that's done in the East anyway, because the Reiki in the East, actually, Qigong is a big thing of mine, energy exercises, and you actually do Qigong in the Reiki. That's what helps build up the power. And then also, traditionally in Eastern Reiki, Eastern Reiki itself, it's only Reiki. The word Reiki only comes from the 1900s. Sensei Usui only created Reiki in the 1900s. He based it on other stuff. So there's a thing called Tahiti, which was said to be almost 10,000 years old, and came from the bird tribe, which looked similarly, very eerily like the blue avians or Ra. If you look into the Egyptian Ra, the blue bird tribe were very much looking like Ra and Thoth from the Egyptian. So this energy system to Haiti is a lot more simpler and a lot more powerful in a different way. So that's like that, with the Reiki, but the chakras as well is there's interesting things with the chakras is that there's actually a front and a back. And most people know that there's a chakra at the front. The chakra is actually a Torah field or donut on its side. So there's a funnel and a tube. There's a point coming out the front. There's actually one coming out the back as well, like yin and yang. Where there's a front, there is a back. and each one actually it connects. It's like a Torah field. So think of a donut. So you've got one here, and it goes all to the back, and there's one here out the front, goes to the back, and there's one at the above, and one below, and you're actually all these. So the chakras are actually
yeah around you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's what it is. It's actually the energies, and again, what happened in the West? The West took the chakra energy and they translated it in a certain way and made it sound a certain way. But the Eastern version and the Indian version of the chakras, they were far more about energy, and it was far more energetic than it was like, because the chakra, the word Sanskrit chakra means wheel, wheel or lotus flower. But they called it a wheel because there was this vortex energy of it. It spanned and twisted outwards. And then that went out and went round into your back. So there's a large chakra at the front. Most of them are large at the front and small at the back. So there are a couple of opposites. So, yeah, there's this. Again, so you can take the chakras, but you can delve more and more into them. And there's tiny little chakras as well within the hands and the body and everywhere else. But also, the chakras are everything in the universe is conscious. So everything is chakras. The world has chakras. The world.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing where I talked about the meridians, the chakras, or the Merkaba, the Torah field. The world has them. Every planet has them. Well, you take the Merkaba, so the Merkaba is not just a vessel, an energetic vessel, but the Merkaba structure. You take the Merkaba and you take the north and the south poles of every single planet, and you put a Merkaba. Where you put the Merkaba, you'll find the pyramids at one of the points. You'll find the Bermuda Triangle at one of those points. Every one of those points of a Merkaba, so the point structure, you'll actually find things. And you can do that on Mars, you can do that on Jupiter. You will find, either energy, or you'll find weird anomalies at those points. So the Merkaba is like a map. It actually tells you where certain things are. It's why Leonardo da Vinci did the Vitruvian Man. Probably if I got that wrong, I always forget the proper. But the Vitruvian, it's the Merkaba. The Merkaba, his hands are out, his legs are out, and it's actually drawing the Merkaba. It's showing the structure that is within that, like a fractal. Everything is within you. So all these things goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And like I say, everything is conscious. Everything is energy. But as any good Taoist should say, hey, what do I know?
Exactly. Yeah, who are we to know? But we explore it. And that's the fun part about it, is being willing to explore and acknowledge that there's something out there that's bigger than us. That's part of my Tao, is just knowing that there's something bigger out there than just the me and the physical experience that has put me here right now to experience and witness this and to explore it. Because if I'm not going to explore it, what is my purpose? I don't have the desire to sit here and not be curious, and having the just the ability to explore too, and being born into this time and space where I can get on the internet and see, is there other people that have had this thought? Where is this coming from? Or like, how many other communities have had this similar experience? And like, it's interesting too when you get into different groups of communities, and we're both a part of the Paradigm Shift community, and sometimes they'll do the dream sessions, and people will have like really similar dreams, or I'll have a friend message me and be like, hey, you were in my dream last night. I'm like, hey, you were in my dream last night. But we might have been doing slightly different things, but we like energetically ping each other. That's been a big thing that I've seen happening more and more and more, especially in the kind of spiritual community where people are more willing to be like, hey, you pinged into my reality. Were you trying to send me a message, or did you like think of me? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I thought of you earlier. I mentioned you to a friend or something. And I'll be like, I felt it. Like, that's just so cool to me that we're now in this experience where we can begin to explore that and not be afraid of it.
And that whole exploring is, in the ancient knowledge, is part of the sacred child. Children are the explorers. They're the great explorers. They observe, they look, they ask a billion questions. And we were never meant to lose that. We're going to, being an adult, and we think, it's actually mistranslated, but in the Bible it says, when a child, I think like a child, I act like a child, but when now I'm a man, I have to act and be like a man and put away childish things. It doesn't actually, the person who translated it for me said that's not what, in the Hebrew, it's not what it says. It's saying it's actually about embracing the child, and even when you're an adult, so man, woman, banana or goat, when you're an adult, you still have your childhood ways. You still embrace the childhood things, but in essence, you play like a child and take responsibility like an adult. So you learn to take responsibility for all your actions and what you do, but you still have your childhood way. That was never meant to. We were never meant to lose that. That's the whole point. I like that.
I'm listening. Sorry. Yeah, I fully agree with that. I had this kind of portal this week open where I started really, it's been happening on and off, but something last week really triggered the inner child work. Maybe it was even more before last week, but last week I did a podcast on the Bring Me to Life podcast that I co-host, and I actually just kind of went on a solo experience, solo cast, and started just talking about how much the chakras in general, the chakra work helped, work with that inner child. But I love how our discussion went there, because that's what I've been intuitively kind of tuned into, is allowing that inner child to come out. And it's so powerful, because it goes back to, the more we allow our inner child to come out and to re-witness the world through us as adults, we're healing that experience, and we're giving children, again, the freedom to be children, because they deserve to have that ability to be curious. And that's how we get more, maybe scientists, maybe explorers, maybe, spiritual leaders, whatever they choose to be, by exploring, instead of saying, like, what do you want to be? You have to figure it out. And you can't believe in this, that, or the other, because their parents are conditioned that way. There needs to be a sense of freedom to really find ourselves, because I work with a lot of people. I have a lot of different college students right now that I work with one-on-one in sessions, and so many of them are at a kind of a turning point. They don't wish to go back to college after the semester, because COVID, in the chaos of being locked down and being kind of out of that situation for the last couple of months to year, has changed their perspective. And they're all like, I found a sense of wonder, and I've realized, I'm going back to college, or I'm going back to this, that, or the other, whatever their normal was. And this isn't just for college kids, just the experience of people I'm working with right now. They realized that whatever used to be normal wasn't their actual, preferred path. And now they have this new sense of, life could end at any point. We just went through this wild roller coaster of seeing how valuable and fragile life can be. And yes, many of us know, like, we'll reincarnate, or we'll do whatever our souls are going to do. But why not experience it in the now? And I've seen a lot of people taking that shift, and they say, I'll ask them, like, well, why are you going back to school then? If it's like so powerfully ingrained in your heart that you don't want to do that, you want to travel, you want to save the world, you want to do these things, you don't think you can do them in school, why are you going to school and putting yourself in this, that, or the other? And I'm not saying anything bad about school. I went to school, I graduated, I got a degree, but they're so adamant about it. And when I ask them why, they say, because my parents are making me, or because my parents want me to, or because society will think I'm less, or because, I have a responsibility. And it's like, but who ingrained that responsibility into you? Your soul is going to be intelligent and powerful, and you have the ability to learn all of those things in other forms of real life experience. Now, I also, at the same turn, I have a couple of clients that are very much like, I just want to go back to school, and I would do anything to go back to school. And I'm like, well, what's stopping you? And they say, I have a sense of responsibility to my child, or my wife, or my current job, and I can't go back to school. And I'm like, well, if that's what your heart wants, though, you desire this opportunity, this experience, why is it that you're being ingrained to not follow your passion and explore what your heart truly desires? So, yeah, that just goes back to the try to be who they need.
well, see, the thing is that it's been ingrained within us that, like, you learn for so long, but then you stop learning. And it's like, the one thing you learn in business, one thing you learn in martial arts, you never stop learning. You're always learning. Because, basically, there's a saying, if you stop learning, you stop growing. You stop growing, you stop flowing. If you stop flowing, you're dead. So, so there's always ways to learn. And it's interesting, like even when people say, well, I can't go back to college I can't, learn, because I've got too many responsibilities. And it's like, internet, YouTube, open university. I'm old school. I'm 51 years old. When I left school, I did Open University, and so in the old days of Open University, it was all either by phone or letter. So you would get your documents, and you'd get your papers and whatnot where you're going to learn, and you do it over a period of months. You say like well, you've got 6 months, or if you miss it this time, then you reapply. You can learn it and do it in a year's time or 2 years time. But the Open University was open. That's the point. It's open, so it took as long as it took. But it allowed me to sort of realise that there's no, don't put limits on stuff. With the way we learn at the moment is it's restriction. You've got to learn it at this point, at this time, and this. But actually, if you actually take away those barriers and take away restrictions, there's a thing called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And one of the things it talks about is that, say you want to learn a language, if you learn 10 new words a day, that is roughly 365 days. That's 3,650-ish words you've learned. On an average language, that's the basic. That's the basic grammar. That's the basic information of the language. So if you can learn 10 words every single day of a language, and don't stress, just let you learn it. In a year, if you can learn 10, in a year, you will have the basic understandings of that language. So in 1 year, you suddenly learn a whole new language. You suddenly change the word around. But what if it takes you 2 years? What if it takes 10 years? Well, nothing. It just takes longer. We've got to stop putting restrictions on stuff. We've got to stop seeing things as good or bad and start thinking more is that there is nothing to stop you ever, learning. And yeah, we can say, I've got restrictions, or I've got the family, got this and that. Doesn't stop you from doing things in a different way, or at least learning in a different way. And I mean, yeah, the thing is with parents, we'll always have restrictions to a certain degree. My dad just passed away this year, and my dad was always a warrior. He was very, very much a warrior, and he told my brother that he worried about me the most because I never worry about the things I should worry about, and I worry about the things I shouldn't worry about, which to me was a bit of an oxymoron. But that's how my dad was. And what happened was that my dad passed away, and it suddenly gave me the opportunity to move to the coast, because the person who would worry and would stress him and could make him ill, he was no longer here. So I had that freedom. Now, I'm not saying you've got to wait until the people you love move to the other vale, but what I'm saying is everything has windows and everything. And so, yes, you're restricted now, but if you really want to do something, how long are you willing to wait? How much effort are you willing to put in? How much of doing little things, drip, 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 the waterway? How much, are you willing to put in? Like I say, you can learn a language in a year, doing 10 words a day, but if you could only do 5 words a day, it takes 2 years. You could do 1 word a day. It takes 10 years. But does it matter? Does it, if well, one thing is known, the more you worry, the more you weaken your immune system, the more actually likely you are getting ill and demising. So the less you worry, the more you focus on happiness and concentration. Epigenetics prove this, the more likelihood you're going to live a long life. So if you see things as that they are, and live every day, one day at a time, but learn things, do things you want to do, live your passions, try as much as you possibly can, whether that you do it fully or you do it a little bit. The whole point is to do it in some way, because otherwise you'll what's the point? What's the point of life? Because if you're not actually living your passion, you're not finding out what drives you, what makes you smile, what pushes you ahead. If you're not trying to find those things, then life becomes meaningless. Life becomes depressing and boring and pointless because you're not seeking out. You're not being a child. You're not seeking out your joy. You're not seeking out your wonders. But as any good Taoist should say, what do I know?
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like you just rounded up so many things that I also agree with. It's just like, what is our purpose here if we're not experiencing things and we're not chasing our joy? And I have that with people I work with one-on-one. Sometimes I'll ask them, I'm like, what is it that brings you joy and what is it you're aiming for? And some of them will just say, I just want to be content. And I'm like, well, is that going to serve you? How long can you sit and be content before you start having, physical things that will come up? Because our minds don't necessarily like being just content. They either like to learn and experience and expand and be lit up, or they'll start to worry. My grandmother was a worrier too. Like my one she would like love to live through the experiences of my freedom, but she would worry about everything. I'm also the child that everyone in the family worries about because I've had the most kind of darkness happen to me, but yet I'm also the most determined to find joy and to experience things at the beat of my own path, versus, being told what to do. And they're so worried because, they've lost the people that I've lost too, but in different, situations. Like my aunt's basically my mother figure. And she will often say that she's like, I'm worried about you. Are you going to be okay at this, that, or the other? And I'm like, I'm fine with those things. I'm okay not having a standard 9-to-5 job or a normal retirement plan or, getting married and having kids while all my friends in my peer group around me are doing so. And she's like, you're not going to feel left out. And I'm like, and if I do, that's on me. But right now, the joy of figuring out who I am and where I want to go is kind of my current focus. And if other things, cross my path in that's fine. But my biggest ultimate experience here is to be who I needed when I was younger, and who I needed when I was younger was someone that was living their life to the purest joy. I admired anybody that could just step into their full power and just like be themselves. Like if I would have known that there was like a 20-something-year-old girl that would have walked into my life with bright blue hair and that traveled and wrote books and played music and made art, that would have been like my favorite person. So that I can be that for somebody younger means that I'm following my joy. And when I start to lose track, like I said, I had a few really dark health situations. I had a couple of losses. I almost was a mom at one point, and I went through a miscarriage loss. And that point, I hit rock bottom for a moment, and I had to ask myself kind of like to realign my Tao, like what was my purpose here? And it was, like there's someone that's out there younger than me that's going through that same experience. So how could I step into the power of understanding that loss and not be, demolished by it energetically, emotionally, physically, mentally, and instead find a reason to continue to find joy. So I work with a lot of people on that have lost people, because I lost 8 people in 8 years. So I say I've seen the different layers of death, like the different layers of hell, because each one was a different somebody close to me. And each time you lose somebody, because you mentioned losing your dad, so I felt that. Like when you lose a parental figure, it's so different than when you lose a child figure, and when you lose a best friend. And your mom is different than your dad, and your aunt and your uncle are different, and then your grandparents are different, but they all play these huge influential roles in who you are. And when they transcend into spirit, it does unlock something different within you. And sometimes they don't have to transcend within spirit. They just have to change themselves, because maybe they have some sort of wide awakening and it makes them a whole different version of them. And you have to kind of hold space for that. But being able to hold space for the change in both yourself and others and still find joy or purpose in the experience, to me, that's what life's all about. But like you said, what was it? Who am I to know?
Yeah. But that's the whole thing of, that's just a way of making sure that the ego doesn't, that you go, oh, I know all this stuff. And because, you know what you know. And it's important to you as long as it's important, but it's that thing of never taking life or yourself too seriously, because that's when issues arise, because you start only seeing one, you don't see all those possibilities, you don't see all those dimensions, your field gets narrowed. So that whole idea of, hey, what do I know? It's about just opening up to everything, and everything is good. Everything is what it is. So anyway, we're wrapping up. What would you like to express to the world? What your last thoughts for this show?
Well, go out there and do something fun that your younger self would be proud of. And if it's okay to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's how we grow. That's something that's helped me do, is to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's how you grow. It's how you learn. It's how you expand, and life gets exciting that way. So, yeah.
And how can we find you? Well, if we want to find you, where can we find you?
I am Shantastic Shine all over the internet. Shannon Shine, if you can't find me at Shantastic Shine, but it's like fantastic with a sh. And ShantasticShine.com is my portal of the internet. I have my music there. I have art there. I have podcasts there. I have jewelry there. I have my new book that I just released. So if you like chakras, you want to learn more about my way of the chakras, it's more of a handbook. It's not like a read it front to back book. It's a tools and guides and tips and tricks, lots of colors and artsy things, because I'm a visual learner. But you can find all of that at ShantasticShine.com, or just hit me up. I love making new friends. I work with people one-on-one. If you did resonate with anything I said, I help people activate their passion projects. I've launched 5 businesses in like 6 years, so that's been quite an adventure. If someone's looking for spiritual branding, or just like figuring out what it is that they're passionate about, or what could bring them joy or feel more aligned, hit me up. I want to talk to you. And Bring Me to Life is my other portal of the internet, where I love that you're also part of Bring Me to Life with the number 2, where you can find all kinds of podcasts from me and all of my favorite friends. So that's where you can find me. Thanks for letting me shout it.
Well, of course, what she said. So we hope you enjoyed the show. In the future, if you ever want to come back on, please do. I enjoyed the show immensely. Happy to. It's called the Boggie Golden Ticket. Come back anytime you want, and we'll do another show. So everybody else, hope you enjoyed the show. If you listen to this, you must be listening or watching it from somewhere, but you will find me on Instagram under Sifu.Boggie. You will find me on Facebook under The Way of Sifu Boggie, or The Way of Conscious Mindfulness. You can also find me on YouTube as Sifu Boggie, and you can also find me on this Bring Me to Life. This network we just mentioned. You can also find me on Spotify under The Way of Conscious Mindfulness or Sifu Boggie. And if you're interested in Qigong, energy work, that sort of stuff, you can always look up the Shundao School, which is at the moment on Patreon, so www.patreon.com/Sifu Boggie. So that's it until next week, until next time. So from myself and the wonderful Shannon, it is love, chi, and Shen. And remember, open your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness. Bye now.